What if the way you've been telling your life story reveals the secret to what is holding you back? Stories play an integral part in how we see not only ourselves, but the whole world. Stories are more than just an important part of communication. They also reveal hidden aspects of our inner talk, which can either support us or end up holding us back from the very things we want most in life, without us even realizing it. Join author, mindset coach, and award-winning singer-songwriter Carrie Rowan on her show, Look for the Good, every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. when she shares nuggets of wisdom from her internationally best-selling book, Tell a New Story, 5 Simple Steps to Release Your Negative Stories and Bring Joy to Your Life. Carrie's powerful stories and compelling guests will empower you to change how you look at your own life while giving you some powerful tools and tips you can use every day to help you feel better and move yourself closer to the life you've been longing to live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Look for the Good. I'm your host, Carrie Rowan, mindset strategist and life coach, and I love sharing nuggets of wisdom about the stories that we tell each other, and more importantly, those stories that we tell ourselves. And you can join me and my special guests as we share our personal stories of strength and triumph every week here on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. You can listen online on your mobile device, in your car, or ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7 Radio. And tune in every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time to get real stories and tips on how to turn your story and your life around. And evolve with us as we unite humankind with universal love. Super excited to be here with you all today. And before I introduce Liz to you, she's waiting in the wings. Hello, Liz.
Hi, Carrie.
So nice to have you here. And it's really awesome that we're talking here today. And, sometimes life throws those things. You guys know I love talking about stories, right? My book, Tell a New Story, all about the stories. We're going to dive into Liz's stories today. And sometimes things happen and we tell ourselves stories that really don't serve us. And when we can dig into those stories and figure out what they are, then we've got something to work with, right? And what I love to dig into is somebody's overcomer story, right? That story, that comeback story. We love the comeback story because deep inside that story that you think is so bad or filled with shame or guilt or all those emotions lies your superpower. That is one thing I know for sure. And when you can get into that story and dig into it and see your strength and see the beauty that's really hidden in that story, it can change your whole life. And I can't wait to dive into your stories today, Liz. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Carrie. It's a pleasure. And I love you call yourself the professor of happiness and joy. We need more happiness and more joy in the world today.
Oh, amen. We certainly do. You mind if I read a little bit of your bio?
Oh, well, okay, go for it.
It's so fun when somebody else reads our bio. So Liz Brunner is a certified professional coach, a CPC, and the CEO and founder of Brunner Communications and best-selling author of Dare to Own You, taking your authenticity and dreams into your next chapter. I love that title. She's been recommended on Forbes with her book, leveraging more than 35 years of media and communications experience, expertise, and leadership. Brunner is sought by high-profile individuals and organizations to build meaningful reputations and powerful brand identities within their markets. She's also a keynote speaker at corporate conventions. She's been the Barron's Women's Summit, the Coronet Global Summit, as well as numerous colleges and universities. And the page goes on and on. I mean, you guys probably remember Liz when she was a newscaster. And so I really love the work that you're doing and so impressive. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, despite some technical issues we had starting.
We made it. You and I are both used to technical challenges being in media for all of our decades that we have been involved in media. And you just have to go with the flow because these things happen. But we made it. Here we are.
I know we made it. Whoa. It's so awesome. I love that. It's so true. And I think I was mentioning we were almost like my music partner and I that we did live shows for many years. We were going to write a book about the crazy things that happen, but you have to play through, right? The show must go on is still really valid today. So
It is. It will always be valid.
yeah, but now we have to do our own technical work, which makes it really tricky here at the home office.
That is not my forte. I'm good at a lot of things, but technology is not one of them. I do my best.
Well, tell us a little bit about, I love your story. I love how you sort of pivoted your career and now you're helping other people really tap into their leadership and what their core skills are and their proficiencies. Share with us a story of how you got started and you just made such an incredible name for yourself. Was that your dream when you were young to be on the news?
No,
Really?
it wasn't. I consider myself in my fourth career chapter, Carrie. Liz 4.0.
Wow.
I went to college for music. I'm a classically trained singer. I sang semi-professionally for 2 years, traveling Europe, and also was teaching high school choral music simultaneously. But there was something deep within inside me, even though I had been singing since the time I was knee-high in the church choir and everything else in my family. We might have as well have been the Von Trapps of Illinois, the city I was growing up, because we were always performing together. But I truly felt like there was something more I was supposed to do. But I honestly had no clue what it was. But I chose to take a step back from teaching and worked in retail for a couple of years to pay the bills. And during that time, I was reading this wonderful book called Who's Hiring Who by Richard Lathrop.
Mm.
And he talked about informational interviews. Now, Carrie, I had never heard of such a thing. I didn't know what informational interviews were, but it's basically when you are able to connect with people in industries that you think you might be interested in. When I was Miss Illinois, 1979, in the Miss America
Woo!
Scholarship Pageant, hey, those scholarships paid for every penny of my education, and I'm very proud of that.
That's awesome.
But I had done one television commercial, and I thought, I wonder if I could do something in TV. Now, I didn't really know what that would be, but I bravely and blindly called up 2 television stations in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, which was where I was living at the time,
Mhm.
and went on informational interviews. I'll fast forward the story a little bit here. And about 6 months after conversations with the CBS affiliate, a position was literally created for me. It had never existed.
Wow.
And I was called the Community Relations Liaison. Doesn't that sound very impressive?
Ooh, I love the liaison.
And basically, my role was to assist all the on-air talent in their speaking engagements, get public service announcements on the air, write public service announcements, and then I went into a booth and spoke and delivered the public service announcements, and then I had my own talk show, and then they asked me to do the weather. And we had probably what was the only 3-women weather team in the country.
Wow. I love
But
that.
that was the best training you could ever possibly have for breaking news. And I know you're familiar with what happens when things go awry. So I was at that station for 3 years when I got a call to come to another CBS affiliate. This one was in Tampa, Florida. And I
Mhm.
was being brought in to be the director of community relations. And I was the only female in upper management. Talk about having to push through the glass ceiling.
Right?
And within a very short period of time, they tapped me to be also the morning news anchor. Now, at that time, that show started at 5 a.m. So I was up at 2 or 3 in the station and we were on the air. And then after the morning news meeting, about 9 o'clock, I'd go upstairs and put my manager's hat on. And I did that, Carrie, for a number of years where I was working 80 hours a week.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then I learned from my agent about the opportunity to come to Boston to work for Chronicle, which is our award-winning news magazine show that's been on the air, I think
Absolutely.
now for 30 some years, more than 30 years.
Wow.
And I came in as a correspondent fill-in anchor for the show. And again, within a year, I was tapped by the news department to be on the Eye Opener newscast with Jim Boyd. And so I must have a sign on my back that says, please give me 2 jobs to do at the same time.
Because you're really good at them.
I'm really good at it. And I said yes. But finally, at some point in time, like, you can't keep doing these crazy hours.
Yeah.
And so I took a step back from being on Chronicle and went into the news department full time. Fast forward now, I ended up being on almost every single show that we had at Channel 5,
Mhm.
including the 11 and then the 6 p.m. newscast. And I was selected to follow in Natalie Jacobson's footsteps. And she was an icon in this market when she retired. And I was very honored to have been chosen for that. And so all told, I was at Channel 5 for 20 years, but all told, the industry 28 years. But again, 2 years before leaving, I was having this feeling again. There's something more I'm supposed to do. And the industry has changed dramatically since I first got into television. And I was quietly and confidentially talking to people in the community. What does somebody like me do when you think you might want to do something else? Because I really, again, had no clue. Well, many of the answers were helpful. Some were entertaining. I see you read the news every night. Trust me, it's more than just reading the news. But one of my mentors did say to me, he said, Liz, you're well known, you're well respected, you have credibility. That is value. Why would you give that value to somebody else? Launch your business. If in 6 months or 9 months you don't have any clients, you don't like what you're doing, you can always go do something else. Now, keep in mind, I have never, ever wanted to own my own business. I didn't seek out to be a newscaster. All these things have happened. And I still believe I was in the right place at the right time. But in his office that afternoon, a kaleidoscope went click. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I literally left and launched my business 6 weeks later. And that was 11 years ago, Carrie.
Whoa, really?
11 years ago. That's how long I've been gone off the news. And it's funny to me when I meet people from time to time and they're like, I miss you on the news. I haven't seen you lately. I'm like, well, yeah, it's been a long time
Lately.
lately. But what's so interesting about all of that is people will say, well, how did you go from like teaching and singing to what you're doing now? And the through themes, if you will, always involved storytelling,
Mm.
using my voice, and or teaching. So when I was singing and teaching high school choral music, again, sharing stories through song.
Yes.
As a newscaster, I was sharing other people's stories using my voice.
Mm-hmm.
As a keynote speaker and a communications coach and an author and a podcast host, I am also able to share or help people with their stories, okay, and know how to use their voice. And then as a keynote speaker and an author, I'm sharing my story using my voice. So those are the themes and patterns. And one of my favorite things to work on with people, among many, is helping them figure out what their stories are. What are those connections? What are the dots that they can connect about their own life's experiences? And how can you create that next chapter for yourself, whether it's personal or whether it's professional? My grandmother used to say, no knowledge is ever wasted. And that's so true. That was the impetus for my book, because honestly, no knowledge is ever wasted. No experience you have, good or bad, is ever wasted. Those are your stories. And when you're able to look at your stories and kind of almost put yourself in that witness position, step back from it
Mm-hmm.
and see what are the patterns and themes and connecting dots here that I can make? You can create a whole nother new story for yourself, a new chapter. So that's in a nutshell.
I love that.
The Reader's Digest long version, but that's in a nutshell.
I love that. We are so, and this is exactly why you're here on the show. We are so in alignment with everything you said. Of course, the singing background, right? And using your voice. And I
Yes.
love what I love what your grandmother said, that all that experience, all that knowledge, it leads you right here to where you are. Because sometimes we get a little, oh, why did I do that? Or I should have done that. And all those shoulda, woulda, coulda stories that never really serve us, right?
What also happens is there are the limiting beliefs that we put on ourselves. Oh, I've never done that, so I can't go after that. Or I haven't crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, so maybe I'm not ready for that. Or I'm just simply not enough.
So true. So especially, which I also love what you said about stepping out of your comfort zone, is when we do that. And this is, I love to normalize this. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is what all of us do. This is what all of our brains do. And especially when you're going to step out and do something like launch a book. We both know that personally, right? I don't care how many letters you have after your name. When you go to step out of that comfort zone and launch that book, it is going to fire all of those insecurities that you ever had and ones that you didn't even know you had are just going to pop out because the brain is just doing its job to keep us safe. And I love teaching that to people, right? Just normalizing that imposter syndrome, if you will, and all those things that come up, which I'm sure you experienced
Oh,
yourself.
of course. I still experience, imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs from time to time. I'm
Hmm.
part of a wonderful keynote speaking community called Impact 11. And I remember
Mm.
the very first boot camp that I went to about 18 months ago. And, I'm looking at all these people in this room, and they may have more than one book. They might have four books. They're keynote speaking all over the world and they're commanding these huge fees. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And yet I'm like, no, wait, come on, Liz, come on. You've been doing this for decades. And so, you kind of have to fight through
Hmm.
that a little bit. But you're so right, Carrie, that every single person on earth at some point in time, more than likely, experiences either imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs or both. And just being able to identify them first and foremost. Oh, wait, what is that? Is that
Yes.
am I feeling like I don't belong here? I'm not experienced enough, or oh my gosh, somebody's going to find out I don't know what I'm doing. That's imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, I shouldn't really be doing this. They don't know that I can do this. Many of us have those feelings, but if
Hmm.
you're able to identify them and then stretch that comfort zone. One of the things I love to share with my clients is we're all like rubber bands.
Mm.
Okay. If you have a rubber band, oh, I wish I had a rubber band on my desk here. I don't right now. But if you had a rubber band on the outside of your hands, okay, this is my comfort zone. Nope, not going outside of that little stretch. When I'm working with people, and I have no doubt you're doing the same thing, we stretch people. Now, you're not going to live out here 24/7, but if this was your comfort zone and you're able to stretch yourself out here, okay, guess what? You've moved the dial on growth.
Mm.
You've
Huge.
moved the dial on personal growth, professional growth, and it matters.
It does matter. And even if it's just a small baby step,
Mm,
even if it's just a
yes.
little bit, right? Less than an inch, all that starts to accumulate. People think about stress accumulating and all the negative stuff accumulating. Well, positive stuff accumulates too. And it's just those very baby little steps, right, that lead us. Because then you look a month after that, you look back and you go, wow, look at how much progress I've made with Liz, right? And I love that you're pushing people beyond that comfort zone because really that's where the magic is. That's where the magic happens, right?
It is. I think it's Neil Donald Walsh's quote who says something to the effect of, that's where the growth happens. It really is outside of that comfort zone. And sometimes you feel like you're stepping off on a ledge and just
Yes.
off of a cliff.
Yes.
What? Sometimes you have to take that risk. I mean, I never wanted to own my own business, never dreamed of owning my own business. The fact that I've
Mm.
had one for 11 years, I'm like, how the heck did that happen? And I've
I
just
love
like
that.
continued to plow ahead and work hard at it. But I'm
Right.
so glad I did it. I'm so glad I did it.
So glad. And I've heard it called, my girlfriend told me we call each other our spiritual running mates, a friend of mine. And she said to me right when I was about to do my apply to be a speaker at this huge expo with over 10,000 people that were passing through. And I was like, I didn't even have my book yet. And she's like, you've got to step onto the invisible bridge. I was like, invisible bridge? What is the invisible bridge? Right. Well, the invisible bridge is that bridge that leads you to that big dream. And all you have to do is just step up onto it. Just put one foot on it. And I remember pressing the button when I was writing all my, details for my talk. And that was it. It was just one of those moments in my life. I stepped on the bridge, and you know what happens when you step on the bridge? The universe fills in the rest for you. It goes, yeah, she's going to do it. And then you start to believe, and then you start taking steps. And before you know it, you're on the other side of that bridge doing what it is you thought you
I'm
couldn't.
stealing that line, by the way, Invisible Bridge. Thank you for
You
sharing that, Carrie.
you can borrow the invisible
Thank
bridge.
you.
I talk about it in my book, and I laugh with my friend Liz all the time because now she wants to step out and do something. I'm like, you got to get on the invisible bridge. You got to put a foot on there and trust, right? Isn't it about trusting that the rest will fill in?
Well, it begins with trusting yourself. And
Yeah.
sometimes that is so hard to do. But you have to just trust just a little bit. Trust just a little bit. And then once you've trusted that, and then you take that next step, you take that next step, and then it just continues to grow. But it's not easy. It's
No.
not easy.
It's not, but you're also telling your brain, right? This is where true confidence comes from. We said we were going to do it. I said I was going to fill out that application. I was going to do it. I don't know how, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to take that step. And then your brain goes, oh, she is going to do it. We can trust her. We can take her seriously, right? We're not like copping out or coming up with an excuse. And the more we do that, those little baby steps, we do the things we say we're going to do, is where a lot of that confidence comes from. That is not just there always. People think you're born into it. And I don't agree with that at all. I know you don't either.
I believe that confidence is something that we can learn, develop, and build. And it is a barometer. I call it the confidence barometer because some days we're, hey, I'm on top of the world. And other days I'm like, oh, I'm just in such a funk.
Yeah.
And you have to find ways to pull yourself out of that. And I have all kinds of things in my book, and I'm sure you do in yours too, about how to sort of get back to that confidence level. What do you need to do to kind of get yourself there? Because it starts with you. You can't rely on somebody else to give you your confidence, or it's definitely going to go away. It has to
That's,
come
yeah.
from you.
So true. And we live in this externally faced world, right? Like everything is pulling for our attention. And when we can take a moment and not rely on other people, I love that you just said that because I tell that to my clients a lot. Stop asking everybody else because nobody really knows. Only you have the answer. And when you can trust yourself, right, to listen to that strong intuition, then you're never going to go wrong with that answer that you get.
But I think to your point, there's so much noise in the world. We're bombarded with information, and we're all on these little things.
Yes.
And so we don't step back from the noise, if you will,
Yeah.
far enough to say, what what is my intuition telling me? What is that still small voice telling me? I'm a big believer in journaling. I've been journaling for more than 40 years now.
Wow.
And for me, it's the way that I'm able to listen and tap into my intuition, among other ways, but that's one of them. And I do it every day. Some days it's only 15 minutes, some days it might be 45 minutes, but that's how I start my day, among other things, and reading many inspirational messages. But that's what helps me tap into, what do I feel? What am I hearing? What am I learning? What is it that I need to be looking at? And I also find it very cathartic to be able to do
Mm.
that sort of practice, if you will.
Hugely. Ah, you are singing my song. I mean, I love journaling. I talk about that too, and I have people do a lot of exercises at the end of all my chapters just to get them into that.
Yes.
It's so important because it is so cathartic. I wouldn't have my albums. I have 4 albums now, and a lot of it, thank you. My first full length album came from a lot of things that happened in my life, things that happened that I wish didn't happen, and that's how I processed it, right? And then through the journaling and the pages came poems, and then from the poems came songs, and then the songs became an album, and it was a beautiful gift. Do I wish those things didn't happen in my life? Of course, but we have to find a way to deal with life, right?
Right, but that's part of the growth of life, is learning how to learn from, they're not failures, but they're experiences. They may be bad experiences, but what are the lessons that you can learn? What are the
Mm.
obstacles that you can overcome? What can you learn from those experiences that you can carry forward? And look, life is hard sometimes. Let's be real. We all have challenges. We all have obstacles. We all have things we have to work through and get over and move beyond. That's life.
Mm.
But I'm looking at a quote from my mom. I love quotes, by the way, and it's up on my wall here. The
Mm.
goal of living is to be able to absorb all of the pain of life and lose none of the joy.
Oh, I love that. Your mother said that's
My
beautiful.
mom, I know, my mom's pretty amazing. My grandmother was pretty amazing. I'm very fortunate that I have some pretty powerfully strong women in my family.
What great role models. I love that. A lot of my book is quotes that my dad used to say. So little stuff that you could put on a sticky note. But when you're a kid, you don't always pay attention to that,
Of
right?
course not.
And it just kind of flies in. But they were sticky. They stuck in my head, and I think about that a lot. And I talk about that in the book. Um, and it's so important to have that and to pass that down to other generations because that's the legacy, right? You're passing strong women and what they said and how they lived, and you're embodying that. And what a beautiful message for the world that you're giving. I love that.
Thank you. I
Absolutely.
do.
So we're going to break real quick, everybody. Don't go anywhere. I know you were hanging on to Liz's every word. We'll be right back with some more overcomer stories. Hold tight. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Look for the Good. We're having an amazing conversation here with Liz Brunner. And Liz, I love those quotes and the stories that you were just sharing. And I also love one thing that you talk about. I like your Liz's 4 C's. Share with us about your 4 C's because I love giving people something tangible that they can use and walk away with and refer back to.
Well, the 4 C's are this. Number 1 is confidence. Number 2 is knowing your content. Number 3 is having clarity of your content. And number 4 is being able to deliver it in a conversational way. Now, why are these 4 C's important? Number 1, when I'm working with a lot of my clients, whether it's one-on-one or in workshops, I may be working with them on a number of different things. It might be confidence, it might be presence, it might be their public speaking skills, it might be their storytelling, whether it's a pitch, a presentation, a speech on a stage, an answer to a question if you're on a panel. It's all storytelling. Storytelling is what connects us. It makes us feel something, and that's why we connect with people. But a lot of people don't know how to tell their stories. That's the first thing. There is an art to storytelling. A lot of people feel like they want to say, well, I'm going to talk about this today. And then they tell you what they're going to talk about. Then they tell you what they were going to talk about. And then they retell you what they just told you.
Right.
Like, okay, that is not the world we live in today. Okay. You have to think everything is quick.
Yeah.
What happens is people don't know how to put that content together. So knowing your content often means preparation. You've got to have time to prepare. You have to block off your calendar to prepare. 80% of your success comes from preparation. No one's
So true.
perfect. No one's perfect, but preparation. So preparing your content. But now when you're preparing your content is about clarity. Can everyone understand what you're talking about? Because a lot of the people that I work with are in high-level positions. They're in all kinds of industries, but they have so much industry jargon that they feel they need to get out there, so much statistics, so much research, so much data. And that's not that it's not important, but what is the story behind those numbers, behind that data, behind that research?
Yeah.
And when you can provide the clarity of that, then you make them care about those numbers. But then you have to be able to deliver it in a conversational way. Some people like to talk in a monotone like this, and they have no pace, and they have no pitch, and they have no vocal variety. I can't even do it. It's too hard for me.
You're not
But it's
built
too
that
hard for
way.
you, I can tell.
Totally.
But when you are able to share your stories in a conversational way, again, you are able to connect with people because they feel something. As if you're sitting next to someone at a bar having a conversation. And oftentimes when people are getting up to present, they suddenly think they need to be very formal and I have to do things in this way with these slides and this, and this, and they suddenly lose their authenticity. They lose the conversational aspect and they become very boring.
Yeah.
But how do you get to that conversational point is you have to have confidence. Well, you can have confidence in yourself if you know your content and you have clarity of your content, and then you will sound like you are confident if you deliver it in a conversational way, even if you don't feel it on the inside.
Yeah.
So which comes first? Having confidence makes you sound conversational, or delivering your content in a conversational way makes you sound confident and feel confident. They all go hand in hand. Those are Liz's 4 C's: confidence, content, clarity of your content, and delivering it in a conversational way.
And that's so it is. It's the whole package, right? Nothing
Yes.
comes first. And the more you do it, the more confident. But the more confident you'll be, the more prepared and the more you know your content. It is. It's all one big soupy thing. And being a performer on stage for so many years, it was just something that I did. So I was already on stage, right? I was already with the banter between songs, right? It was easier for me to talk between the songs, really, than the performance. I thought was a harder thing. I could get up and tell anybody jokes and songs, so that was easy for me. But it's marrying all that stuff together, um, and I feel like putting it in a way so that it really matters to people, like you said, and that's the emotion. And that is really a beautiful thing that you're teaching people, because people are going to remember it. That's the other thing. Companies want to make sure that people are going to remember the inspirational things that were delivered during a keynote. And what makes it memorable is that emotion, right? Are they going to laugh? Maybe they're going to laugh at your jokes, but maybe you're going to have them crying at the end, right? It's feeling all those juicy things within that.
Yeah.
That's what makes a really great talk.
Earlier, we were talking about limiting beliefs, and something just struck me because when I'm working with people, sometimes they just don't feel like they know how to overcome their fear of public speaking or whatever's going on in their brain. And I myself have had my own limiting beliefs. And one of them was that I didn't think I was smart enough to run my own business, which is one of the reasons why I never, ever even considered it. It's like, I don't know how to run a business. I don't have an MBA. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so I had to get over that obstacle and that limiting belief when I launched my business. And the more, to our point of that invisible bridge, the more I took steps to learn, to grow, to trust that I actually did know what I was doing. Did I need to get help? Absolutely. I have a great accountant and I have a great staff and I have all these people that can help me. But I had to get over that limiting belief, and it's such an obstacle for so many people. And the way that I got over it was to first begin to trust that I did know more than I thought I knew. And that is
Yes.
something that I preach to so many people. And I use the word preach because sometimes I think I'm a minister, sometimes I'm out there. But we have to learn to trust that we know more than we think we know.
So true.
And when you can really begin to own that, that will help you get over so many obstacles and overcome them, because it's like, wait a minute, what do I know as opposed to what don't I know? And
Mm.
if those are things that I don't know, how can I learn, or who can I go to help me with that?
Yeah, I love that. And nobody knows your story better than you do. So when you
Yes.
make it personal, when you take that data or that information and you marry that with your story, well, now you become that much more compelling and interesting. And flipping that story that you just said, I love that you weren't smart enough, flipping that on its head. But wait a second, I am smart enough to get on that stage because nobody knows my life better than I do. And if I
Mhm.
can weave my stories within, nobody's going to contest that because I'm the expert on me. And that's also what makes you unique and in demand, when you can bring that, right back to the title of your book, your uniqueness, your authenticity.
Yes. I remember I mentioned earlier about speaking to some folks in the community that I respected when I was trying to figure out what to do. And one gentleman that I was speaking with, I was very vulnerable and authentic and said, I'm scared to launch a business because I don't know if I'm smart enough to run a business. And I just don't know. I don't know. And he said, Liz, you are smart. You'll figure it out. Bam. I mean, how lucky was I to have somebody say that to me? You're smart enough, you'll figure it out.
I love it, because then you can hang on to that story. And when it's somebody that we respect and they flip that story around for us, yeah, it gave you a whole new perspective,
It
right?
did. It
That
did.
I love that. Everything is figure outable, right? That Marie
Yeah, that's what
Forleo.
Forleo says. Exactly. And there is truth to that if you are willing to step out of that comfort zone, if you are willing to ask for
Mhm.
help. One of the things so Jack Canfield of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series did
Yes.
forward for my book. And he's written numerous books, and one of them is his success principles. And number 17 is you have to ask.
Yes.
And I remember he was a guest on my podcast, and we had a wonderful conversation. And so I was thinking, okay, maybe I should ask him to do the forward for my book. And I was petrified to reach out and ask. I'm like, well, I'm not some famous person. I'm just Liz from Boston. And so I bravely asked, and I even in the email I said to him, I said, well, I'm going to take advantage of principle number 17
I
and
love it.
ask, okay?
Uh,
And he said, he would consider it, but his reputation was on the line. He would have to read the book. I said, of course I want you to read the book. And so he got a copy of it, and I'll never forget the email I got back from him saying, congratulations on writing a great book. Here's your foreword. But what would have happened if I had not asked, Carrie? And
mhm.
again, I come back to when you're trying to overcome limiting beliefs and have challenges in your life, if you're afraid to ask, guess what? You don't cross that invisible bridge.
I love it. Absolutely. And you never know, right? It's that tiny little step. And that was a big step, right? But there were all those little steps in between that led you right there to that step. You're the second person that came on. My guest last week was talking about that same book, that Jack Canfield book, that Business Principles book.
There are
Um,
100 of them, I think, in that book, but I chose number 17. That one worked for me.
she was talking about the same one, the ask principle, because she has Jack Canfield as a quote on the front of her book. And, she's like the same thing. She had to overcome that thought of, ooh, why would you do that for me? Or who am I? Who am I thing that comes up when we go to step up
Limiting
on that.
belief, I'm not enough, right?
And we all have it, everyone who's listening. It's not just you. We all have that. We are all wired that way. Liz has it, I has it, and it popped up. It pops up in the most inconvenient of times when we're just about to step on that bridge, make a decision about something. And that's the difference. Like you said before, I think just acknowledging it. And I love to tell my clients to be like, hey, brain, I got this. It's okay. Put that fear in the passenger seat. I'm driving, right?
The other piece of that equation, Carrie, is that it's being human.
Mm.
It's being human. And we are all imperfect, but sometimes being imperfect is more perfect because you're being your best authentic self. And so just trust that. It
Beautiful.
takes time. It's not easy, but hey, we can all do it if we just one step at a time.
One little step. And I promise that when you start taking those steps, they accumulate, right? Those little baby steps accumulate. And you said something else that was really important earlier. You said that you have a little bit of a morning routine, and I'm really big on a morning routine. I think it is so crucial. And I call it the non-negotiable morning routine because it's non-negotiable to everybody around me, but it's also non-negotiable to me. And I feel like that's the most important thing is stepping up and holding yourself accountable to what you said you were going to do. Back to our point about building confidence, right?
Exactly. I've been doing this for so long, but it truly is. I mean, I get up, I have my breakfast, I'll read the papers, I'll check emails, things like that, see if there's anything urgent that I need to deal with. If there is, sometimes I might take care of it, but then I go into my sort of zone of journaling and reading those inspirational messages, and that gets me started for the day. And then I do my workout, and then I actually will officially start my day job. But that's what's important to me. That helps me kind of feel like I'm on the right path for the day. And I'm a big like list person. I'm still kind of old fashioned where I like write down what I want to do today. And this is another thing that I challenge my clients on because I don't care where your list is, if it's in your computer, on your calendar, on a piece of paper. Do you do the hard things first
Mm.
or do you do the hard things last? Imagine how much more confident you would feel about yourself if you do the hard things first and then you go to the easy things. How much more energy you would have if you did the hard things first and then you do the easy things. Now, some days you have a whole list of hard things, but pick the hardest and start there. Because otherwise, I know for myself, if I have something that's really a big project I need to tackle that requires a lot of brain power, for example, I
Mm.
do that first. I do that first, and I feel so rewarded when I get done, and then I can cross it off my list, and everything else is just easy peasy.
I love that. Yeah, the hard things first, the things you don't like, right? The
Right.
things you
Things you don't want to
don't,
do. Oh my God,
right?
I have to really do this. Oh,
Yeah, I
yes.
don't want to make that call. I don't want to have to talk to that person. And I love what you said because when you do that first, it gives you this boost. It's this dopamine hit, right? It's like, I did it. And it's dopamine mixed with confidence. It's all sorts of goodness happening there. I
Exactly.
love that. And who doesn't want to start their day that way instead of the dreaded, expletives because your alarm went off and you're late. And then that starts your day, right?
And think about it, if it's something that you're really dreading doing and you're saving it till the end of the day, all day long, you're miserable thinking, oh my God, I got to do this at the end of the day. Oh, I want to, oh my God, I only have an hour left before I have to do it.
So true.
Get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. Okay, that everybody's going to take that tip home and try it because that is a power tip. Thank you for that tip. And everybody, we're going to be right back with more stories from Liz. Hold tight. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Look for the Good. This is such an awesome communication. Yes, we're having a beautiful communication with Liz Brunner, and it's such an awesome show. I'm very excited. And I want to let's talk a little bit about your book, okay? Because you're a best-selling author. And, I saw a stat one time that said something like 90% of people want to write a book and say that they will write a book in their life, but it comes down to like less than 5% that actually do. So I love that. I love that you have this book, Dare to Own You. And what a powerful title. Tell us about the book. Tell us really what inspired you the most to really want to write that book and what made you do it.
People have been telling me for years, Carrie, Liz, you should write a book. I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, maybe someday. Maybe there was a limiting belief rolling around in there. I don't know. And I started reading books on how to write a book. And after I felt like I had read enough books on how to write a book, I started to write a book. But what was interesting was that many of the books that I read, the advice that I was being given is come up with an outline and then come up with a chapter synopsis. And my brain didn't work that way. Now, think about the work that I did in television, which is I would do interviews with people that had many, many minutes. Let's say I had a 30-minute interview with somebody, and I had to boil it down to a minute, 30-second story. What this outline was asking, all these experts were saying, is write that minute, 30-second story and then write the rest of the chapter. It didn't work that way for me. My brain didn't work that way.
Yes.
And so I had kind of started writing some things down, and I ended up putting it aside for a couple of years. Life got in the way. I got busy. But then I learned of a company called Grace Point Publishing, and it actually started with my business coach who had started Grace Point Publishing. But when we were working together as my business coach, I did not know she had a publishing house.
Hmm.
And we were talking one day and she said, well, I have a publishing house. I said, how did I not know this all these years? And she said, well, we are running a program right now that is offering you the opportunity to work with us. We'll give you a writing coach, and we will edit your book, and we will get it all the way to the point, the graphics, the cover, everything. We'll get it to the point where you can take it and shop it to another publishing house, or we can publish it for you. I made a decision that day, and that was in March of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I literally finished it by July.
Wow.
And my writing coach, she was so funny because I sent her some things. I'm like, I don't know if this is, talk about feeling like limiting belief. I don't know if this is good enough. And she said, Liz, I want to know more about this story. I want to know more about this story. I said, you do? Really? You do? She said, yes, keep writing. It's like, okay. Boy, it was like, Carrie, I don't know how to explain it other than I felt like I was getting downloads from the universe. And I'm sure you can appreciate that. It's like you just start writing and stuff just came to me. I don't know how it came to me. But the impetus goes back to my quote I shared with you earlier from my grandmother about no knowledge is ever wasted. And so the book is Dare to Own You, taking your authenticity and dreams into your next chapter. And my favorite review and recommendation came from Forbes, who called it a teaching memoir, because that was my goal. And I remember when that came through, I was like, that is so perfect. That is so perfect, because it's exactly what I was hoping to accomplish, although I didn't have the words for it, despite being a writer and an author. And it is taking you through those 4 chapters of my life that I told you about. But like you, at the end of every chapter, I have questions for people and points to ponder to help you move the dial on your own journey. And how can you use my experiences? What can you relate to of those experiences in your own life and find ways to connect those stories that are yours to help you move the dial? So that's what happened, and I was so proud of it because then I got, the Jack Canfield forward, and then it was published in November of 2021. So it's already 3 years old, which is hard to believe. And a second edition of this same book is coming out in the spring of 2025, which will have an updated introduction. And now we've added an afterword. I didn't even know there were afterwords.
Ooh, there's an afterword? It's
There's
kind of
an
like an after party.
afterword. It's like, that sounds like an after party. But I'm already brain thinking about what's the next book. And now it's
Wow.
kind of a matter of there are things marinating in my brain, and I've written a lot of things down, but now it's sort of finding that time. And you can't sometimes wait for that inspiration to just to go for it. You have to just start. So that is perhaps a goal in 2025 for me is to, because I've already kind of started, but can I devote more time to really hone in on what is that next message I want to share and what stories do I want to share?
I love that. It's beautiful. I heard a quote one time. I used to have it on my door here when I was writing my book. Begin and the pressure is off. Right? It's like just starting that like again, we're back to the invisible bridge.
Back to the invisible bridge. You've got to take that first step. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you, and I'm sure you can appreciate this with your clients, Carrie. I know I can with mine. Sometimes it's just that just getting started. They're so afraid to get started and they don't think that they're ready to get started. They don't have enough experience to get started. Just start. Just
Just start.
start.
And then the pressure's off. We spend so much time thinking about it and agonizing about it, that whole anticipatory anxiety thing. And
Mhm.
really, when you just do it and start it, then
Right.
all that just dissolves. It
Yeah.
all just goes away.
And
And
there are a
that's
lot of TV stories in here too for people who are interested.
awesome. Love
Serotonin, you're
it.
taking your authenticity and dreams into the next chapter.
With the forward by Jack Canfield.
With the forward by Jack Canfield, yes.
Because you asked, you were confident enough to ask. I love that. That's so awesome.
Well, I don't
So,
know how confident I was, but I did it anyway. And that's the point we're trying to make here is you're
right.
not always going to feel that confident about taking that step. You just have to do it.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
And look what
You
happened.
did. And look at it. Now you're going to have a sequel, a post party for
Yeah.
your book. And now another book will be coming out. So I love that you really dive into what somebody needs to own themselves. So give us one little thing that we haven't talked about. I know we talked about the 4 C's. One little thing, and I love to ask people, like maybe it's a little mantra that you say to yourself. Something that you've created in your own head when times get tricky. What is that little thing that you remind yourself of? Maybe it's somebody else's quote.
Well, I have so many quotes in my head, it would be nearly impossible, Carrie, to narrow it down to one. But I will go with this point, which is be willing to give yourself permission.
Mm.
Be willing to give yourself permission to take that step onto that invisible bridge. Be willing to give yourself permission to trust yourself. Be willing to give yourself permission to own all of who you are, strengths, weaknesses, challenges. Be that authentic, be that vulnerable. There's a difference between authenticity and vulnerability, in my opinion. Authenticity is being true to your core values. There's never a question about who you are, and you own all of that.
Mm.
Vulnerability, on the other hand, is sharing the stories with the people who've earned the right to hear them. And
Mm.
that comes down to trust, trusting yourself, trusting the other person. But again, you can only trust yourself when you own who you are. And so give yourself permission to dare to own who you are.
That is beautiful. I love that. And the other thing I would add to that about vulnerability, and I talk about this too in my book, is that it's our strength, right? Our ability to be vulnerable can really be that superpower, because it's really just stepping into, like you said, who you are and owning all of us, the
Right.
little broken pieces and the not so broken pieces, and sharing, being okay with sharing that with the world just the way you are. And that's why your beautiful teaching memoir, which is what my book is too, touches so many hearts because it's real, it's authentic, right? And it's coming from that place. And there's this quote, I know you love quotes, so I'm going to share this quote with you, that I heard Jules say one recently because my daughter was playing one of her newer songs. Make something beautiful of your broken things.
Mhm. I
Right?
don't know what the word is. It's a Japanese art where they take the broken pieces of china
Yes. Wabi
and they put
sabi.
them back together. Yes, and they put it back together with gold or whatever. And
Yes.
you think about it, it becomes this even more beautiful, different piece, but it's still beautiful because of all those pieces that have come together. And that's what, I hope people will take away from the book of owning who they are and taking all of those experiences, good and bad, because none of it's ever wasted, and then creating that to the next chapter. Owning who you are, taking that authenticity that you now own, and moving it with your dreams. And take action on your dreams. Give yourself permission to take action on your dreams. Take that one step on that invisible bridge.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely beautiful. And the thing about wabi sabi that they say is that the item, in this case, like you were describing, the vase or whatever is broken, is so much stronger because of those breaks, right? And we're so much stronger because of those breaks. I love that. Take that step. Don't be afraid to take that one tiny little step onto that invisible
Give
bridge.
yourself permission to do it.
Yeah, I love that, giving yourself permission. And you know, the beautiful thing that happens when you give yourself permission is it's this gorgeous ripple effect, right? And then I gave myself permission, and you see me, and you gave yourself permission. And now we're all enlightened. We're all inspired because by sharing that, you're giving us all permission, Liz. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely beautiful.
Go out there in the world.
Go find your bridge, everybody.
Find a
Tell them,
bridge.
tell them, where can they find your book? Where can they find out more about you if they're interested in working with you?
Thank you so much for asking that.
Sure.
Pretty much you can find everything on my website, which is lizbrunner.com, LIZBRUNNER.com. You can find my book there. You can order it from my website as well. You can learn about my coaching practices, and you can also learn about my keynote speaking engagements. And I truly love being on a stage and sharing experiences and stories with people. It is one of my passions. So if anybody's listening and would like to have me as a keynote speaker, I would love to hear from you, and you can reach me at lizbrunner.com.
Awesome. Oh, wow. I love it because your stories are so compelling. And just that conversational aspect of it that you talked about, I feel like is so important. And you are amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been beautiful having you here today. And thank you for sharing your heart with us today.
And thank you for having me, Carrie. Bless you for being the professor of happiness and joy.
Thank you, Liz. And remember, everybody, go to my website at carrierowan.com if you want to know more about behind the scenes of how we do Look for the Good, and sign up for my mailing list. And remember, it is never too late to live your best story. Be well, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Look for the Good with your host, Carrie Rowan, best-selling author and mindset coach. Join us every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. right here at Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. If you weren't able to catch an episode, no worries. Just visit our website to find all the archived episodes of Look for the Good on demand, so you don't miss a thing. And remember, it's never too late to live your best story. For additional resources or to find out about how you can work with Carrie directly, visit carrierowan.com for more details.